So, a lot of times when people think of meeting God, there's a lot of cowering and fear because God's going to see you for what you are. He does. Okay? And then we think, and you're going to get reprimanded. Hi, Diane. And you're going to get reprimanded. So we think that the first time when people see God, they're going to get reprimanded. They're going to be punishment. They've made this link in their mind. There's theories on why. But generally, people have made God punishment.
So
But
we talked about Jesus, God, because according to the Bible, you can't see God and live.
it's correct. But you can see God in a bod. So, and get back to that later because what's happening with the rest of the universe? Well, Jesus preached in the Sermon on the Mount. Well, everybody else is fully present.
While he's teaching. He's in human flesh.
So I'm gonna put aside that question right there, and I'm going to start off with the Beatitudes. So one of the things that when Jesus is on earth and he's first preaching to people, is they are in Judaism. They're trained, but once again, strong link of the law, punishment, and so you're constantly. What you have to do is offer sacrifices. So it's kind of like a mob boss, where you're constantly having to buy the boss off, because you're always in debt. With a loan shark, you're always in debt. So one of the first gifts of Jesus to us is take away that debt. Oh, now I can learn about God as love, because that whole cloud of debt has been taken care of by the blood of Jesus. So Jesus, when he's talking to the groups, the first thing he starts out with is blessings, the Beatitudes. Okay. So that's step one. Okay, step two. What's the next part? Okay. A lot of times, if you have a good Bible, it will have subheadings. Like this section is Beatitudes. The next section is on. Okay.
Disciples in the world.
Disciples in the womb. Okay. The world. And the way that they identify this is Jesus talks about salt and light. Salt and light. Now you remember that the Dead Sea is getting input from the River of Jordan. The River of Jordan flows into the Dead Sea, but because the only way it gets out is through evaporation, the Dead Sea becomes incredibly salty, kind of like old people, incredibly salty, and then not really able to contribute. It's just a place that is Dead Sea because it kills things. So likewise with Jesus, he gives us inputs from God. And to avoid being the Dead Sea, we need outputs. Okay.
Eventually, scientists are going to find out something that's going to be fabulous for using that salt. And that area in the world is going to be fought over just for the salt.
Oh.
For the value of it.
Another side topic. They're already doing that. They've been doing that for the last 100 years.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah, but don't get me going. Okay, so our outputs to people and to God. It's what we give back. And that way we don't end up like the Dead Sea. So, first part, Sermon on the Mount, blessings. Blessing, blessing, blessing. God is blessing you. You've got it good. Don't worry about being punished. Blessings. In return, you need to be salt and you need to be light. The reason why you can take on this duty is because you've been blessed by God. So really, you're receiving what you receive, you're distributing it to others. Now, this becomes a kind of important obligation because if you have groups of people that are very well off, they tend to devote more time to holding on to what they've got. Okay, so that's going to be a warning that comes online, but I'm just warning you ahead of time that a very human danger, especially when you have a lot, is you devote more time to holding on to it. But right now, input, output. Sermon on the Mount. Okay, next comes the law. This is Matthew 5 and 6. And Ian uses the E word. This is not intensifying the law, it is, anybody remember? Yes, he uses the term explicate. And explicate sounds so much like the word explain. You think, well, why don't you just say explain? But we're going to use the big word, explicate, okay, which is to applications of the law. But part of explicating the law is you got to get back to the heart of the law. So we got the Sermon on the Mount right here, heart of the law. Now, there's an interesting thing about the heart of the matter. We call this a foundational truth, okay? And I'm going to use that word like it has special meaning. And I'll put it in quotes because it is a term worth hanging on to. Y'all ready? Okay, here's why the word foundational truth is so important. In this country, democracy, it's a very noisy affair. We've been scaring the world for over 200 years. Even 200 years ago, they were saying American form of democracy is truly frightening because you're allowing masses, you're encouraging everybody to just speak their truth. And so we've been a noisy, obstreperous place for that long. So when people talk with each other, they say, how do you back that up? You say that this is the right thing to do. Well, back that up. You go, well, this is true because this is true. Or because I believe in God. Or because I feel this. Or because God is love. Or we should love our other people. Okay, so when you're talking about the law, like the Ten Commandments, they are logical outflows from foundational truth. And when you get back to, when you take your logic back to foundational truth, you have now hit the foundation, and there's no justification for foundational truths. They just are. Okay, let me give you an example. Is God real?
Yes.
Yes. I'd say, why do you say that? And which is kind of an important skill. I mean, you should have some reasons to back that up. I mean, turn your person next to you. Somebody says, is God real? You say, yes. Why would you tell them God's real? What support would you give? Go. Why would you say God is real?
Because he's real.
Okay. So why is he real to you?
Because I can see it around me.
There you go. Good. And then I'd say, well, what do you see? And then you would start detailing things that you see that makes it likely that you are God. Okay. So then if you had trouble doing that, then it's like priority numero uno. When you go home today, start working that out. Call me at 665-9585. Getting this on tape as well. Okay. Call me. Go to your internet. Call Ian. Area code is this one, 831. 831. And or I should be able to, Pastor Ian's number. Let's see. Oh, I had my newsletter right there and it somehow wandered. Oh, it left on the music stand. Anyway, or call Ian. Okay, so if you can't answer the question, why is God real? Okay. Now, if I was to say, why is God real, then I would say, because, well, for me, first there's my personal experience. You know, as I went through life, there was my testimony. Secondly, so things have happened in my life that make God real. Then secondly, there is the reality of God in creation. You know, creation is more, things more likely in creation because of a creative God. Okay. Now, this is ironic because I've been teaching evolution for 37 years. And I'm actually rather satisfied with it as a explanatory theory. But they both go back to, okay, you believe this evolved. Why do you think that? You walk it back, and you walk it back, and walk it back. And eventually you get to a foundational truth. And the foundational truth, there is no logic to it. It's your starting point. When you get back to deciding right and wrong, eventually you're going to get back to, this is just the way it is. And sometimes we feel foolish for doing that, like, well, it's just how I feel. Okay, well, is that a foundational truth for you? Why, yes, it is. It's what I base my life on. Well, then it's a foundational truth for you. And foundational truths, they don't have any logical support. They are the starting point. You have to start someplace. Okay? So in every argument, whether 2 plus 2 is 4, or the 10 Commandments, you have to start with a foundational truth. And we would call that the heart of the law. For the 10 Commandments, for all the commandments of the Torah and the Tanakh, okay, they have to have a starting point. And that's your foundational truth. And that is, love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and your neighbor as yourself. Okay? So the heart of the law is love God with everything you got. In you. And a kind of a second corollary, which really that's it. Okay, and then you should love your fellow man because they're created by God, so of course you should love them. But we'll just add it on anyway. Love neighbor as self. Like I say, America is a pretty contentious place. And we're going to have a lot of discussions, had them for the past 100 years, going to keep having them. I do this, I believe that. And eventually you're going to get back, you're going to find whatever logic you're trying to use the other person, you're going to get back to your foundational truths. Okay? And once you're there, that's as far as you go. Okay? You can try to argue how my foundational truth has more benefits than your foundational truth. You can try to do other things. But it's right and wrong, they have to be foundational truths. Okay, that's what Jesus did. He started people off with God. God is your Father. He's the creator of everything. There's one God. Okay, love God. They asked Jesus, what was the most important commandment in the Bible? And he said, love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And he said the second commandment is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. So that's your starting point right there. And then everything else comes to applications of it. Okay, that was a long lead-in to the next section of the Bible. And I'm actually, in view of the time, yes, I'm winding it up, believe it or not. I'd like to direct your attention to Matthew 5:19. Excuse me, 6:19. 6:19. 6:19. The reason I went to there was I tried to calculate how far ahead Ian has gone through, and he's moved through much of Matthew 5 and 6. So I thought, well, I'm in safe ground if I go to Matthew 6:19. Now, when you get there, go ahead and don't wait for me. Start reading.
Put down Ian's phone number, 227-6270.
Ian Renwick. Thank you, Bev. 227 6270. And I will toss in a few details. One is that he generally takes Monday off, but emergencies, yes, by all means contact me. Hey, my dog just got ran over. That's an emergency. And then, but for non-emergencies, any other day of the week, try and keep, send him text. Anybody, how many of you are comfortable with texting? The great thing about texting is that it doesn't wake the babies up. So if you're just phoning, call in between certain hours.
My sister, she don't answer her phone. She hardly looks at the computer, but she checks her.
And but it's a nice thing. It's a nice thing for when you're raising babies too. So please do call him. It's important because if you don't call him, he's going to feel unneeded. He's going to say, "Man, I teach Sunday after Sunday. Nobody asked me any questions." And so please do call him. Great teaching. Okay, but I digress. Matthew 6:19. Thank you. And when you're spelling Matthew, it's with 2 T's and an H. Yeah, okay. So here we go. Please, somebody read me the first verse, verse 19. Go.
Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal.
Okay. Newsflash. If you don't have insurance and you don't have a savings account, people are going to worry about you. So balance Matthew 6:19 against the way we have it here. But people kind of look on you, what's wrong with you? Whereas God is saying that your major part of your treasures are in heaven. Now, how do you do that? Okay, somebody else with verse 20, please. Oops.
Treasures in heaven where moth and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal.
Okay, so Bank of Heaven, how do you do that?
Well, you treat one another.
The way you treat one another. That actually puts treasures in heaven. Okay, so the idea is that the treasure you store in heaven could be your actions. And kind of like your, hey, I do this, hey, I do that. And the more good you do, the more treasure you have in heaven. Might sound a little silly, but I remember Camp Good News. That the common expression was, "Oh, that puts a star on your crown." So this idea of action reward is it's a bona fide one. Okay, do you wish to add something?
Also, there's a verse that says, whatever you do your work heartily as unto the Lord.
That's correct.
Could be sweeping the floor.
Could be sweeping the floor. Work as unto the Lord. So now we're going to put a qualifier on good actions. Don't just do good actions, but do them as unto the Lord. Okay. Now,
If anybody wants to sweep my floor, come on over.
that's right. That's right. If the Holy Spirit is coming to you, please, and please knock first. Okay, yeah. Now, this does carry on with church. They have an idea that when you get to heaven, it says the books will be open, books of Revelation, and what doesn't say exactly what's in those books. But some people have an idea that it's going to be. One preacher, when I was a kid, said your whole life just plays out like a videotape, all the good and all the bad, for all of heaven to see. And they'd give me a meaningful look. And I'd be going, ah, okay. So there's this cause and effect. Once it gets back to the actions dedicated to God, okay, that's your treasure. And if you haven't done much, well, you don't get much. Okay. Now, there is a slightly different, but I think critical way, and that is because, well, what if you're in a place in life, incapacitated or something like that, you're laying in a hospital bed, you don't have a chance to do much. Oh, bummer for you. No treasures in heaven. Okay. You have this gap in your life. Impaired functionality, memory loss. Okay. You just had a rough childhood. So some people, they spend their whole lives as an unrepentant person. They come to the Lord at the end. And, well, bummer, you didn't have much of a lifetime to good works. Your bank account is pretty darn low. Okay. Got some problems here if you believe that your reward is based on your actions, even dedicated to God.
Okay, what about the woman that gave 3 pennies, all she had? The rich man dumped a bunch of gold in a bucket.
Yep, the poor widow.
One gave more.
That's right. Jesus said that the widow gave more.
Sometimes a little act of kindness is more valuable than a huge gift.
Go ahead and build on that. Why? Is there just a benefit to being a widow?
You can make more of a difference.
Wait a minute here. So we have Bill Gates. Okay, Bill Gates, and we have the poor widow.
You get what you have.
So Bill Gates makes huge splash, boom, and people used to do this back in the temple here. So, what's so beneficial about the widow's mites or the pennies?
It's all she has.
It's all she had. So give sacrificially. Okay, that's a thought. So once again, it kind of gets back to attitude. And I wouldn't deal with this like it's trivial stuff. I hear this fairly often. It's your actions. It's your actions. James basically says, by your actions, show your attitude. Okay, the book of James. So we've got this treasure in heaven, and obviously you can't take it with you. So is that what heaven is all about?
Well, then you've got the situation with children. Children are still learning what to do. And I think of Maddie's daughter, Therese, who we love. And she is not able to do
Right.
anything, but she's a delight.
Right.
But as far as I'm concerned, she should have a lot of treasure in
A lot of treasure in heaven. What is God's treasure?
us.
Us. Not what you have, not what you do, what you are.
Yes.
So we think about gathering treasure to the streets of gold, living in the mansion and all that sort of stuff. But I submit to you that the treasure you store in heaven is what you are. So back to the widow. What made her widow's mite so important is that she gave out of what she was. And what she was sacrificial. Is that what you are? Well, we all have gifts. And the rich are encouraged to be humble, okay, and provide for others, demonstrating what they are. So I submit that when you get to heaven, the treasure is what you are, what you become by what you do. Matthew 10:16. So this becomes important a lot because it's not exclusive to American, but I find as an American, as you get along in life, you accumulate a lot of stuff. And for security's sake, like a hermit crab, you just tend to build a little bit bigger shell and gather a little bit more resources. And I know, and I see it pop up in certain small ways. Like when I think in those quiet moments, am I doing okay? Well, unfortunately, one of the first things I do is I check out my accounts. Yeah, those are doing okay. Those accounts are okay, I must be okay. Or I look at my kids. My kids are like treasures. Are they doing okay? Yeah, they're doing okay. Most of the time. And so if they're doing okay, I'm okay. So we kind of have I don't know what your measure is for you, okay? But if I said to you right now, are you okay? And you said, I'm doing okay, why would you say that? What would you base it on? Go. Turn to the person next to you. What would you base your okayness on?
Isn't it grateful?
Kathy?
What did you say?
You're grateful that you have food.
Amen. Kathy?
I would say for me, you know, after my daughter killed herself, I mean, I went through such a bad time. But I will say for me, everybody in this church was so kind to me. It was so kind to me. So I feel, I mean, I don't go around telling everybody, oh, my daughter killed herself. But I do go to those suicide survivors groups. And when you go to those groups, you realize you are not alone. I feel okay.
And do you find that you have an obligation to be kind to others because that's the way you were treated? Yeah. And that is when you're giving God what you are, the actions, you know, both the action through the actions you do and the actions you receive, changes happen inside. Okay. And you're slowly, stage by stage of glory. 2 Corinthians 3:14 talks about we go from stage to stage of glory, seeing the Lord.
Weight of glory. So some people will get really heavy.
The weight of glory, that's right. Unless it's like light, in which case you can have a large amount of it. or you're just salty. You get to choose. Okay. But storing up treasure. So, he doesn't say don't store up treasure, although one person, the rich young man, he said just that. You know, he realized that riches were an encumbrance for the rich young man. So he said, sell what you have and then come and follow me. With the idea being is that he'll become treasure by following Jesus. Okay, get rid of the dead weights. So, yeah, this is a tough one to apply. Okay, and I have to make sure that in my personal life, the way I give and what I give and when I give is not for me to get puffed up, but to reflect God in me. And so it's a decision by decision thing that we live out. But I think the exciting thing is that you don't gain treasure in heaven, you become treasure. And so I don't think God's going to have, I couldn't imagine anything more boring than the angels being forced to watch, maybe as punishment, my life. Okay, you're a naughty angel, you're going to have to watch Sparling's life. Okay, since there you go, no, okay, punishment. So judgment may be very brief. It may be, you stand in heaven, it's not what you've done, it's what you are as you stand before God. And that's exciting, both in what you refrain from doing and what you choose to do instead. It's exciting. So we're becoming treasure in heaven. And that's all I've got. Any questions?